We did that. That was that kind of phenomenon. What is called, what is called? I don't remember the phrase we use. Like getting on the bus first and buy the ticket
Yeah,
later.
right, right.
Yeah, that was very common during the whole, reform period. It's just, China at that time did not have much like regulation or law on even on book. So people had to work in this gray area. Sometimes that could get them into trouble, and it did happen a lot, many times. But sometimes it worked out well, and the government, the local authorities, saw the advantage of that kind of experiments, and later, sanctioned those practices, write them into law, and provide legal protection. But certainly we saw a lot of failed experiments. But that the whole phenomenon was very common at that time. It's less common now, I guess, as more and more laws, regulations established. And I think it also has to do with the fact that, local authorities at that time, in the 80s, 90s, particularly in the 80s, I think were more entrepreneurial. Today, the bureaucracy, if they are forced to act, they would. But normally they are not. They were not as risk taking as their predecessors in the 80s and the early 90s.
Would it be because they are kind of entrenched in their own, how do I put it, benefit or their economic gains already in the current system? There's not much of a difference between in the past where it's a big difference for them even personally, and now, I mean, they're making money, like good money already, right? I suppose.
I think that's part of the reason, but I don't think I don't know whether that's the main reason. That's part of the reason. I frequently go to industrial parks in Fujian, in Zhejiang. I talk to the local officials who in charge of those parks. They are great. I mean, they are as entrepreneurial as business people. But if you go to inland areas, most cases, the local authorities not enthusiastic about the economy. They just wanted to hold on to their position. But also that's this difference between generations. Now people just now are people particularly. I think that people are used to enjoy better life. You're going back to the 80s and the early 90s. They had to work hard. There was nothing for them to enjoy. They have to create something in the first place. So, business government officials in general, I think at that time, more of them were more entrepreneurial than today's, local government officials.
The little risk that they take has a major improvement. And now, sure, they take little risk or they take more risk, but how much they can gain or how much they could pay for the mistakes, right? So would that be a...
I think you're right on that point. Today they can just enjoy, the prosperity created, at that time, and they don't want to take risk. I think that's the problem with China has now. Deng Xiaoping in 1902, during the southern tour, asked the local officials to be bold. Today, I don't think, and some people may still, pay lip service to Deng Xiaoping's saying, but really, how many of them really as bold as Deng Xiaoping, who was, an old man at that time? So I think this is something that has, the Chinese government should think hard about it.
Right.
This in Chinese it's called like Qian Xuesen zhi wen. Got a lot of attention from the Chinese media because it speaks to glaring weakness of the Chinese system. That is, Chinese economy is not innovative. which is not innovative enough, particularly compared with, say, British Industrial Revolution or American Revolution, or even compared with, South Korea or Japan. Chinese economy, the second largest GDP, but in terms of innovation, in terms of introducing new products, creating new industries, we have not seen any yet, and that certainly has a lot to do with the Chinese education system. That system was still very much a copy of the Soviet model. And so we are very sorry to say this, but this, as a matter of fact, is true that, during the reform period, the state enterprises got more autonomy, and
that's what you mean by the Soviet system. The state controlled education. Is that right?
Yeah, the whole Chinese university system was copied after the Soviet model. And you have this.
What is the Soviet model? I guess.
This university is very, very specialized. You have like technology, science, or even like some mining, college.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, like 交通 transportation or whatnot. I mean, the name means transportation.
那个矿业大学或林业大学。
Oh, right. So forestry or whatever.
Right. Also, this separation of the Chinese Academy of Science and universities, you don't see that kind of a separation here in America or in Western countries. And it's it's very much like the state enterprises. Is heavily administered or regulated by Department or the Ministry of Education. They appoint the president, the secretary, and they decide what to be taught in classroom, and what textbook to use.
Really?
So that's you cannot run a university like this. And if you do that, I mean, you will not see any innovation, any learning, creative learning in universities.
And the incentive system is not helping too, right? I think you talked about.
The incentive system is very strong. We would say it's too strong in a sense. People now only care about quantity of publication. And from the regulators' perspective, it's hard to measure the quality. So you can show them quantity. So so that forced China to become the largest producer of Ph.Ds. and research articles. That ranking China has moved up very quickly. But in terms of the quality of research, of education, that's a totally different story. I think I don't know whether it's from the Chinese government or from Deng Xiaoping himself. I think sometimes we tend to think, particularly people here, that the Chinese leaders, they are just so ignorant. I mean, they know pretty well the problems China has, but we just don't know how. Sometimes the system just doesn't work the way that they intended. I think people like Wen Jiabao, Hu Jintao, they know very well, better than I do, certainly, the problem Chinese system now have. I think, for example, Deng Xiaoping, admitted that, he didn't know how to run, say, a socialist market economy. So what to do? Well, you give local authorities more freedom, allow them to try. Now, the central government at one time admit that they, don't know how to push forward, say, political reform or further economic reform. On the other hand, they, hold on to power. They didn't allow local authorities to try. So I guess that's the problem China has. I mean, it's okay that you don't understand something, you don't know how to do things, but you should allow people, particularly local authorities, to try. And then, different, trials, different experiments, they can compete with each other, they can inform each other, they can learn from each other, and then better solution can emerge out of, regional competition. So I think that's the way to go, and I hope, this is a point, pretty. I mean, the Chinese government, I think, the people know that's the way to go.
Yeah. See, I don't know if this is a fair characterization, but to me, the Chinese legal system right now, it protects the various level of government. In a sense, what they do shielded, for example, various economic reforms and whatnot. Like the law help protects them. But then the average people, don't get as much of a protection. You look at the cases of the poisonous milk or the shoddy construction in the Sichuan earthquake. I mean, they really can't sue anyone once they touch upon a sensitive, quote unquote, sensitive area or legal venue, like stop that for them. They couldn't get the proper recourse. Even bringing up the topic is forbidden. And yeah, I don't know if it is fair that to say that the law kind of protects the ruling class. In at least, I guess the good side is protects on the policy, but then it also shoots. Yeah, I don't know.
I to some degree, I'm sympathetic to your characterization, and it's an irony that under socialism you have a government not protecting the interests of the people. It is according to the socialist doctrine, the government is is for the people. Is the people's republic, right? But somehow I think the idea got what I don't know whether it's the idea or the practice got wrong. Under socialism, this idea that the public ownership or the public assets going to serve public interests. So the idea then the law should protect the public. But the very idea of the public is very elusive. Law sometimes used to, in the name of protecting the public, but at the expenses of, individual interests like you and me. Then, then that easily can get into trouble. If you can, and that happened many times in China, particularly under Mao. A lot of campaigns like anti-racist movement and so on and so forth. They were campaigns intended to serve the interest of the public, but by imprisoning millions of people, that's not the right way to serve the public interests. And we now, I think the Chinese know better now. You have to protect people's interests first before it's even possible to talk about the public interests.
Yeah, it's tough to see. I guess from the outside, it's tough to see in a sense. Over here, we have the concept of eminent domain. If the state needs to build a highway and whatnot, well, they can tear your house down, but at least you are compensated accordingly and fairly. But in the case of China, you hear cases where they need to build, well, sometimes it's just a building, a new shopping mall and whatnot, your house is gone and you're not compensated for it. And definitely not fairly. And that's just, it just makes me feel bad.
I totally agree with you. Sometimes, of course, it's just those developers or local government officials. They did that totally for their self-interests. But sometimes it's the case that they thought they were doing a service to the public. They thought they were building highways, they were building malls that would serve better the public interest. But I think they have to be. I guess they have to be very careful when they use public power, and that is why in the West the laws very much regulate what the power holders can do. In China, very much the other way around. The law says if you cannot do this, if you don't have legal right to do things, then you cannot do it. I mean, the law should prohibit what the government cannot do, and whatever is not prohibited in the law, people should have the right, have the freedom to try anything. That's, I guess that's the gap between rule of law and the rule by law. And so in that regard, China has had a long way to go.
Yeah. Like I'm feeling more pessimistic the more I read.
Well, that's certainly not our message. We do feel we are quite confident, particularly I guess Professor Coase. Given what China has done in the past 35, 36 years, no one, even Steve, would not possibly imagine China would move so fast. Yeah. So we have every reason to be optimistic, but certainly you cannot just history doesn't repeat itself, and Professor Coase is very aware of that. He at the end of the 2008 conference. And he made the remark that he remains very optimistic about China's future, but then he said human beings as we are have this tendency to mess things up, and he gave his personal experience, like the early 20th century Europe was full of hope. And then you have, World War I and then World War II, and achieved nothing. So we hope. I mean, that's just a hope. I mean, we certainly, people are not. And another point I want to emphasize, and this is a great point, Professor Coase, emphasized to me many, many times, that human being, we as a species, is very, very young. So we hope we have a long time to learn and to evolve, and I think we are just now at the very beginning, to explore, about nature, about the human society, and about what we can do, and the growth of knowledge. That's the only sources of growth that really is unlimited, and Popper made this great point that we cannot predict the future because the growth of knowledge is unpredictable. So that's why we emphasize place so much emphasis on the free market for ideas. That's the only hope with that can bring up new knowledge, new ideas, and that's the only way can sustain our economy and our life. That is true. I mean, of course. I mean, the accident, death due to car accidents growing very fast in China. But still, I mean, the system works to some degree, and of course, there's, as I said, huge room for improvement. And the people now, the other day, I think 2 weeks ago, I talked to an American friend who just came back from China, saying that now people are more. He saw more people on the street, like waiting for the traffic light. In the past, people just go; they don't care. They don't look around. Now they say, "Oh, it's red light. You wait for green light." That's a big improvement. I think we are really optimistic about the China, the Chinese future, and And I think this is the message we want to convey in the book.
Right. Yeah. It's a constant, ongoing experiment in China. That in a sense, some of it are constantly improving, and some are maybe lagging a little.
I agree, but it's certainly true that in the past, I guess after 2000, I guess the pace of reform, the kind of experiments that be able to conduct it, not as much or as bold as in the previous 2 decades. And it is the case that now the Chinese economy is doing well. And so in terms of, if you think about the cost benefit analysis, people in power today are less likely to take, big risks. But that's human life. You have to take risks, you have to run experiments, you have to allow, people to compete, different ideas to compete, different policies to compete, and the better ones will emerge. That's the only way, that human society can conduct their business.